You are now listening to Halal Talks.
I want to start from the beginning. You were 19 years old when you converted. What were some of the influences in the beginning for you?
So, I think that conversion stories are interesting because they get asked so much. I wonder sometimes how much of them has been filled in over the years, So, I think that some of the major influences were the autobiography of Malcolm X, where underground hip hop was social justice type issues, was meeting some of the Muslims on campus and getting to know them and spending time with them. And I guess all of those things probably came together to result in me accepting Islam.
So I think I might have also seen that hip hop was a big influence for you too.
Mm-hmm.
How did that kind of play in?
Well, I think that one of the big decisions in my life was to stop listening to the radio. And that probably happened around, I'd probably say like midway through my freshman year of college. And, I had a roommate who exposed me to the underground world of hip hop and kind of kept pushing it on me until I finally gave in and realized that what he was saying was making sense, and the stuff I was listening to before that was garbage, and that I needed to convert, not to Islam, to underground hip hop at that point. And then, so I started to get into that scene, and it just made a big difference because it got me thinking about a lot of things that I wouldn't have thought about otherwise, like issues of politics, issues of society, who has more, who has less, why, discrimination, all these kind of things, history. Malcolm himself played a big role in the scene of underground hip hop, especially in those days. Islam itself plays a big role in the underground hip hop scene, although not as much today perhaps as it did then. And so those things were there, and eventually, I picked up on them, I guess.
What were some of the main hip hop artists that you listened to at that time?
At that time, so probably at that time it was Black Star, Talib Kweli, and Mos Def, and then of course Talib Kweli and Mos Def individually. Common, Dilated Peoples, Atmosphere was big, Brother Ali was big. Even before I became Muslim, Hafidhullah, Allah protect him and preserve him and increase him. And Deep Puddle Dynamics, Sage Francis, Idea. I don't know. Can't really think of more.
I think one thing that many people kind of lose out on is that when they think of hip hop, I think they think of what's playing on the radio and talking about the money, the girls, and that kind of stuff. But I think hip hop used to really be, and maybe still is in the underground scene, more of a poetic form to kind of, how you were saying, talk about true issues in a way that could capture more people.
Yeah, I think we could say that that's kind of hip-hop's origins were in that. I don't feel that I can speak authentically on hip-hop anymore, even though in those days I was really big on it. I was part of the group of the founding group of people of the hip-hop club at UCSD, and we used to do a lot of stuff, but I'm a little bit rusty on all of those things. But yeah, essentially what people listen to the radio, and the radio is garbage. It's pretty much, and then we're not honest with ourselves, because people say, oh, there's a difference of opinion on music and so on. So there's no difference of opinion on the radio. What most people are listening to on the radio, there's no difference of opinion on. That stuff's just out. It's totally haram. And maybe some of the stuff in the underground scene you might be able to get away with, depending on. Binary Star was also big. One of them is Muslim, one below. So, some of these, it was very different. A lot more narrative, a lot more thinking. Also a lot more sarcasm, different kinds of storytelling. Slug in Atmosphere is an incredible storyteller. Brother Ali is an incredible storyteller. So that was really what was vibing with me in those days.
The perception of Islam amongst hip-hop artists, as I've seen in the past especially, they looked up and respected Islam, very contrary to how people look at Islam in America right now. Would you say that's true?
Yeah, I would say that's true. I don't know how true it is up to today. I think it's still the case, at least at some level. But definitely when I came into Islam, it was like that.
Hmm.
There was a lot of respect for Muslims. There was a lot of respect for Islam. Islam was kind of associated with those who were oppressed,
Hmm.
and was a religion of speaking truth to power and
Right.
all of these kind of things. So people had respect for it, largely because of Malcolm, but also because of many other figures
Yeah.
who, again, in the world of hip hop and also of poetry.
Yeah.
Uh,
That's amazing, especially looking at Malcolm X and the people he's influenced. I know, for example, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, one of the greatest NBA players, he was influenced by Malcolm X. A lot of close people that I have, they were also, they converted because after reading his book. What I find interesting about him is that he was only Sunni Muslim for 2 months. And those 2 months, like, we don't even know how much knowledge he had about fiqh, about the seerah, about all these things. But his iman and his faith is what was able to be transferred into other people. And that's really the power of faith, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, many people, especially I think in popular culture, outside of the Sunni Muslim community, people tend to erase the last year or so of Malcolm's life. Allah yarhamu. And the last year is really important.
Right.
And it is a good reminder, like you're saying, that knowledge is important, obviously. I mean, I'm someone who thinks knowledge is important, but sanctity or sanctification is not necessarily the consequence of knowledge. And Malcolm had a different kind of knowledge of the heart that was very, very strong. That we're still feeling the effects of today. One time I met this reporter from Al Jazeera who was traveling around the country, and she said that she asked me how I came into Islam, and I told her that I read the autobiography of Malcolm X, and then she said that she's been traveling around the country, and over and over and over again she's meeting new converts, and she's asking them that question, and they keep saying the autobiography of Malcolm X. It's truly the gift that keeps on giving. It's really amazing. SubhanAllah.
I think I need to read that. I'm gonna be honest with everyone right now, and I haven't picked that book up. But
we'll try not to judge you.
Yeah, try not to judge you too much. I'm putting myself out there. But like, what for both of you, maybe like, what was like a key takeaway from that book that really draws people in? Because I didn't know that it had such an impact.
Yeah. Do you want to go first?
Sure. Okay, so the comparison I have with Malcolm X, like his qualities, I find very similar to Umar radiallahu anh. And that is that, like, these two people, they were chasers of truth. Wherever they found truth, they would turn to it. So if we look at Umar radiallahu anh's life, in the beginning, for him, the truth was the Quraysh and all of their values. And he found that to be the best. There was nothing better than that. Now, the amazing thing about him was that if he found something better than that, then he would turn 180 degrees towards that. When he found Islam, he turned 180 degrees towards that. And you could see clear development in stages. And same thing with Malcolm X. He has about like 5 different stages or 5 different nicknames that represent each stage of his life. So when he came into prison, for him, he was still with the gang type of lifestyle. When he came into prison, he met people from the Nation of Islam, and they introduced him to that. And then he found that to be the best and the truth for him. And he devoted himself 100% to that. And then in his last year, he found Sunni Islam, and he devoted himself 100% to that. So I think that's what it is. Like, the humility that he had, I found in Umar radiallahu anh too, that they're able to look back at their past and say that I was wrong, and now I'm going to go 100% in what I believe is true.
Yeah, it's like humility and courage and recognition of truth and sacrifice all together, right? I think that for me, I'm not really sure that I understood what it was about Malcolm that really registered with me until I heard Dr. Omar Farooq Abdullah say it. So Dr. Omar, when he talks about his reading of the autobiography, he speaks of how he found it in the beginning of 1970. And he was a master's student at Cornell, and he sat down to read it, and he couldn't put it down. And then he read it all through the night, and the morning came, and he opened his windows, and it was like a beautiful morning in Ithaca, upstate New York. And he asked himself, which I think is an amazing thing. He said, I asked myself, what did you get from this book? It's a really interesting technique, right? So he says, I asked myself, what did I get from this book? And I got number 1, Allah and God are the same thing. and number two, that God exists because of the way he guided Malcolm in his life. And I think that was really really something. Especially number one, I don't think that people really understand that one, that Allah and God are the same. And what Dr. Omar says about it is that he was a graduate student, language, literature. He knew about Islam. He knew that God and Allah were the same thing linguistically. But he didn't understand that. He didn't really understand that they were the same thing until he read the autobiography. And so I think what the autobiography does for a lot of people is it makes Islam not foreign for them. I think, in retrospect, that's what I think it does. You know, for people who, and again, I don't think that a lot of young American Muslims really might understand that the same as you know, but for someone who always sees Islam as something being foreign. You read the autobiography and you're like, oh, this is not. Allah and God are the same. And then you read his life. His life is just amazing. Allah yarhamu.